My full body armor uses ACOUSTOPHRESIS and ELECTROPHORESIS. It is used to levitate matter to the medium rise. Primary solution for levitation is blocking the nuclei microwave, the radiation of the pressure and kinetic energy of gravity itself around the entire shape of my body armor that is lifted into the air. Is to remove the microwaves and bump against it as far as quantum collision, atomic collision, and to collide against these matters and move at high speeds and a large amount of alpha decay and beta decay against these small matters. And the step down of the alpha decay and beta decay is also gamma decay, delta decay, third decay, all the way down to from 24 steps down to omega wave decay, omega particle decay, and radiate against these particles that are raining down in different directions as gravity, the kinetic energy, while the planet is rotating its axis. It's also falling in space. Can you imagine that? Some people don't believe that, but yes, the planet has to fall in space, so it doesn't remain there just spinning around in proximity in space. No, it falls at the same time while it rotates. Have to do that. If you had a ball, if I had a ball, I'll show you. For example, if I tied a piece of tape around or something around the ball, if it turns and spins on an axis, what will happen is the tape will probably gain friction and fold down to the surfaces at high speeds. So, but if it falls at the same time while it's rotating, it can cause the friction of the fall to move this way, while the friction also moves this way, while it's turning on an axis. And while it's turning on an axis, the friction also, air pressure or pressure radiation, pressure also frictions this way and this way. So we're at the three-dimensional areas of radiation phasing, like a ACOUSTOPHRESIS, where you levitate object in the three-dimensional areas of fraction and proximity. So you're phasing all areas around circumference in the object so that the object can be suspended. However, while we're moving around an axis, because if it doesn't fall, you know what happens? We will fall and mash into the ground. We'll be compressed to the spherical surfaces of the foundation of the earth and crush within it. We have to have a pressure that moves also upward so that we may stand vertically in space. Now, the idea is to move the nuclei microwaves away from our body. And when you do that, you don't fly, you don't propulse out of the earth with friction fighting against the mass moving in the air. No, you block the mass, blocking the microwaves. And when you block the microwaves, you fall out of the planet. You don't jump, you just fall out. Why? Because there's no gravity friction to stop you moving in antimatter freedom. So, is to levitate matters to move and to radiate in ACOUSTOPHRESIS and ELECTROPHORESIS. Boyle's law and Charles' law, these different laws and rules of Charles' breakdown of these liquid masses that are in the way it causes friction and motion in space and movement. So you move that away, you fall closer and closer and closer, depending on the vector, the wavelength of the radiation frequency. And I'll tell you more about the Faraday's law cage within the system that blocks the microwave, which is also hyper oscillator to rapidly decompress and compression. Now, in the voltage, when using high voltage, I use static, high frequency static, often known as far as voltage. So I can put as much juice as I want without burning out the wire, without burning out the coils, by using the law of momentum. It takes momentum in order to get burnt. You know, I can take a lighter and a flame, brush it across my hand real fast, and as long as I don't burn, as long as I move fast enough, I don't get burned. It takes the law of momentum for that. The same thing is moving particles in space. Radioactive material broken down to from mass to a mesh to a powder, and then coated onto the wiring, so that these high frequencies will move these radioactive material, remove the small particle waves. Invisibility is done the same way. We're using like mercurium. Mercurium will move alpha waves at over 100 billion alpha decays at one time, and it also move off the bouncing light that bounces off the body by the ACOUSTOPHRESIS, electrophoresis. So longitudes the electric ions in the electromagnetic field and broadens and lengthens the wavelength and the strength of the wavelength, fighting against the particles in space to the medium rise. Thus, at the same time it fights, these also are small little K matters, which is like an ion radiation. It moves at like 2.2% the speed of light. So moving at 2% the speed of light, and then you have the longitudinal force and energy of the kinetic energy of the oscillations of the electrical wiring, which also moves and displaces the light bouncing back and forth of the human body, pushing the light far away, or from the enclosures of the actually, and pushing the light away, and setting a barrier of matter to the medium rise, to where light then projects on a barrier, just like a flashlight onto a fog, a polyfog, where it casts a shade behind the fog. So therefore, because the particles are blocking. However, when it moves in thermodynamics, it also breaks down to smaller, so the particles you don't see a mist, you just see some particles invisible as it. So I'll tell you more about my secret. I'm just doing more.